Hello, welcome back to BEFFIOBSWWM, beating every single Final Fantasy in order because something is wrong with me, and today we are here with Final Fantasy V. Now, I'm recording this actually 2 days after I recorded Final Fantasy IV. We're on a roll today, the Final Fantasy IV video. But I've been in Final Fantasy V for a little while. So, let's just do a quick recap. Final Fantasy III started, basically 2021, January 2021, end of day after Christmas on 2020. I finished it in the middle of June 2023. It took me 2.5 years. Final Fantasy IV started beginning of 2024. I finished it in the middle of 2025, also in June. So it took me a year and 4 months. Final Fantasy V, however, I started in July 2025 and finished it at the end of July and finished it at the beginning of August 2025. Needless to say, this is the fastest I've finished any of these games so far. It took me 30 hours and 20 days, if that, less than 20 days. So, Final Fantasy V. Also, I think I'm going to format this. Maybe the future one's a little bit different. Let me see how I like it. But, so it released on December 6, 1992 for the Super Nintendo, the SNES in Japan. That's the Japan release date. And actually, Final Fantasy 3, 4, and 5 all released 1 year after another, which is kind of insane when you think about it. How big of a jump was Final Fantasy 3 for just RPGs as a whole. The complex story in the ATB system of Final Fantasy 4 a year after that. And then Final Fantasy 5, which is completely revolutionizes the job system of Final Fantasy 3. Pioneer. Art, again, it was directed by Sakaguchi, produced by Ito. The squad is here. And, oh man. So, the thing about this game that's way different from Final Fantasy IV, right? At this point, right, when I played Final Fantasy V, and even now, Final Fantasy III feels so long ago, right? I beat it in the middle of 2023. Final Fantasy IV seems a little far away ago, but it's still in my mind. And I hated Final Fantasy III, and I liked Final Fantasy IV, and so comparing it, it's kind of night and day. Because Final Fantasy IV leans so heavily onto the story side, right? I kind of think of games on a scale. I feel like it's not this. I'm very much oversimplifying it. But there's story games, and then there's gameplay games, right? A shooter, all the way on gameplay. A Final Fantasy IV, all the way on the story side. The gameplay, it's not much. I mean, there's visual novels are obviously way more on the story side than Final Fantasy IV, but for the nature of this argument, right? And so then you hit a sweet spot in the middle where it's a perfect story gameplay game. I can't think of an example right now, so I won't. Final Fantasy IV, pretty far on the story side of this. Now, Final Fantasy V, actually it's a lot closer to the middle and probably more towards the gameplay side, I would say, in my opinion. And historically, I have been a story-first, world-first, character-first type of gamer, or story experiencer. I kind of value the story more than the gameplay in a lot of video games. Right? I don't play a lot of multiplayer games, besides fighting games, really. And any game I do play, I kind of will stick around for the story rather than gameplay. However, this game surprisingly makes me rethink this, because the gameplay was so interesting, I guess. It was so cool, the systems in play, that despite the story not being the greatest, especially compared to Final Fantasy IV, there was a story, so it's way more than Final Fantasy III, but compared to Final Fantasy IV, this game hooked me, unlike Final Fantasy IV did with its story, with its gameplay systems, which I don't think has happened to me before with a game trying to do both, right? I'm a big fan of simulators and management games. So obviously those are all the way on the gameplay side, the strategy type of games. And those have obviously hooked me with those, but not like an RPG. I usually play RPGs only for the story, but I want to play Final Fantasy V for the gameplay. I still think I prefer story games, but this is really making me rethink this. So, what about the gameplay do I like? So, I kind of like to think of Final Fantasy V as a Final Fantasy 3-2. It basically takes Final Fantasy III's concept of classes and changing classes and evolves it to a whole nother level. So the class change system this time extends out of Final Fantasy III Remake. If you want to change classes, you have to go through this whole period. And it's kind of like one class, another class. Very hard line. This game, how they take class changes, is a much more fluid approach, I think. What they do to make you incentivize changing classes is that each class has a special ability associated with them. So the swordsman fighter can have a guard ability. The archer, I think, has an aim ability. White mage, obviously red mage, black mage, they have their mage abilities, and every single character has an ability that they have. Further, the more you use a class, there's also class XP, which is similar to Final Fantasy III, except when you level up the class, you get more abilities you can swap out for that character in that class. Further, if you swap classes, you keep the abilities that you unlocked from other classes. Now, this is where it gets real. This is where it's fantastic now, because the possibilities suddenly become endless. The very moment I saw you were able to get an ability and put it on a different class, I fell in love with this game like no others. And it just, the thought then racing through my mind of having an archer with black magic, or I can't think of all the possibilities. This is really bad, but just literally the moment I saw that, I was like, I could have an archer with protect, which probably wouldn't be that good, or like a swords fighter with monk's focus, or even I found out later that a lot of its base abilities, like being able to do more damage unarmed, you could put that on like a berserker, for example, and then you could have a super strong berserker with no weapon and just be as strong. It honestly just, it's such a cool system, and it's phenomenal from a gameplay design, because the worry when you have a game with a choosable loadout, the worry is always that players find their favorite loadout too quickly and they're afraid to move and deviate to something new. Final Fantasy V is fantastic, and Final Fantasy III, to its credit, it tried to do this too by constantly unlocking and probing you, and forcing and having bosses force you to change into a different class. Albeit it wasn't done well, you can see what it's going for, and I'll give it its 10. Final Fantasy V does it intrinsically instead of extrinsically. Extrinsically being telling you, intrinsically being you want to discover other things. It intrinsically makes you want to try out new classes, because every battle, like if you stick in something and you level it to max, every battle you're wasting the XP you could get from unlocking new abilities. And also the abilities are hidden. So you can get a new class, you can want to try it out, and you want to know what ability this has. And oftentimes the level 1 ability is the ability that comes with the class, right? But then the level 2, level 3 abilities are things that aren't necessary, are maybe intrinsic. So for example, another thing actually is you get the Thief, which is able to detect traps, I'm pretty sure. And then you get the Geomancer, I think after like the 3rd dungeon or the 3rd crystal. And that is able to detect floor weaknesses or hidden traps. And so, if you get your Geomancer leveled up or your Thief leveled up, you're able to put the Thief ability on the Geomancer, which intrinsically has that, and now you have a character that can see every trap, and so you won't fall down anymore. That's so cool. And the thing is, you wouldn't know that unless you were leveling that up and you found out that ability later, and so you're able to put it on another character. It is so insanely easy. It instantly, it makes you want to play every single class and level every single class up, which is very hard to do without giving you an explicit, like, you should do this, because the passion, the urge, if it comes intrinsically, is so much more, and they're so much more inclined to do it if they want to do it themselves rather than you telling them to. So it's always a struggle in game design, to figure out how to do that, how to tell people something but have them want to do it, that balance between intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. And this class system just, it hits it right in a sweet spot. It's so unbelievably fantastic. I will say some bosses, they do still force you into like a specific comp without telling you, but there is it's very easy to switch comps. There's no penalty for switching a comp. And also, if you really like a certain playstyle, you can put the abilities of the playstyle you want on the characters that you need for a boss. It's still very fluid in that way when you're forced to go into a specific comp. So, I forgot to mention this, but I played the Pixel Remaster version of this game. It's finally time. I'm done with the 3D versions. I bought the Pixel Remasters, I think while I was playing Final Fantasy IV. Because the mobile version that I bought for Final Fantasy V originally back in like 2020, it was like a mobile port on Steam. What looks so terrible, and the Pixel Remaster looks so good. And can I just say, I'm so happy. This game looks absolutely gorgeous, and the music, I love Final Fantasy music so far, right? I mean, the 3D remake orchestral soundtracks, right? But this Final Fantasy V soundtrack actually, I think, is the first one where I had to like stop in a place just to listen to the music. And especially, I don't think I'll ever forget this, walking into the first town and hearing the harvest music. Oh my god, what a banger. I mean they're or something along the line, and I was like, what song is this? And it's like dun 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 dun. I think that's my favorite Final Fantasy song. Just like right now, it's just that, just straight on. It's so good. It's so fantastic. And then the ending sequence as well, with everything, that brought me to tears as well. The presentation of this game is just immaculate. Now let's get into kind of the story and the features of the game, right? So something I noticed about this, again, very Final Fantasy newbie. I don't really know much about any of these games. The 4 crystals come back again. I mean, like, obviously I know like crystals like a running theme, but it's specifically 4 crystals, those 4 elemental crystals, back again. But what's really cool is it's Final Fantasy 3 2, because there's 8 crystals in another world, similar to Final Fantasy 3, because you had the 4 crystals of light and the 4 crystals of darkness, and here you have the 4 crystals in Bart's world, the 4 crystal in Gloff's world. That's pretty funny. How the crystals integrate with the story and the world is very cool. Something I always wonder is, like, what do the crystals do? They just guard the element or whatever? But like when the crystals are stolen or they're broken, like it feels like nothing really changes besides the balance of the world, right? But in this game, the crystals actually control the elements directly. At the very beginning of the game, when the water crystal is stolen or shattered, one of the two. I think it's shattered. Yeah, it's shattered because that's how you get the jobs. All the water stops moving in the world, and the only way to move in your boat is with a sea monster. And that was really cool. And then also, you're only able to go through the desert once the air crystal is broken, because then you can actually move through the shifting sands and the sandstorm that was going through there. It's a very, very cool way to mix the gameplay and the story and the world all together to make it really feel like it's urgent. because you really feel like these elements are dying, and you know without the air moving and the air blowing and the seas moving and the fire burning, things are going to go bad real quick. And so you actually have a motivation, like you could feel in your gameplay, like, oh, things are going down. Another thing about the characters in this game, they shockingly had a little bit of depth. It wasn't a story game as much as like Final Fantasy IV, where like every character you can generally write an essay about like their story arc. Was the story arc particularly good? Depends on the character. Rose is a girl that was made in 1991. Obviously, she's not gonna have that big of a story arc. But the characters in this game, they have a little bit of depth to them. I can't even lie, especially Gololf and Curl and Lena has a really big character arc. The gender bender themselves, except it's 1992, so what do you expect they're gonna do? She just accepts being a woman instead of like trying to balance them, but she still likes being a pirate, so you know that's something. I accept that. And then the twist of the entire game was actually pretty well hidden and sufficiently teased, and then when it happens, it's pretty good, because the Final Fantasy moment in this game is when you travel to Gololf's world. Now, it still doesn't beat the Final Fantasy 3 Final Fantasy moment. I will say it beats the Final Fantasy 4 FF moment. But it's still pretty cool when you finally are able to go through the teleporter, the meteor, and you just are in this completely other world, an entire new world to discover of exactly the same amount of town, exactly the same amount of space. It's like, oh god, whatever I got myself into. I thought we were almost done with the game, because you are done with all these 4 crystals. It's like, okay, we're gonna go beat Exodeth now. And boom, the whole entire world, you're halfway through the game. It's like, holy shit. Each dungeon also felt very unique, and where they were placed in the game was very cool and seamless. The blocking in this game is great, because another thing with a lot of RPGs, especially I notice a lot, is like, how do RPGs tell you where to go? Because they don't want to tell you, because then you don't want to do it, or you feel like you're being pigeonholed into going to this one place. But if you're exploring naturally, it's like, oh, I need an upgrade to go here, oh, I need this. You know, it's kind of how a good Metroidvania, will kind of guide you into going to this one place. Breath of the Wild, how it guides you into going to the first ancient beast, right? It blocks you. It's blocking. So it puts these things specifically naturally in the world. So it's like, oh, I just can't go there. Let me find somewhere else. And then, boom, where you think you're going to go, where you think you naturally discovered, is actually the next story point. And the thing that happened the most for me was Morse Forest. Because I was like, oh, I like to do everything. I like to do all the side content. So I was like, oh, let me go do the side content real quick. I go into the forest and I start walking around. I'm like, oh, it's pretty good. And I'm like, wait, this is a story place. I need to get out of here and do more side content. I didn't even realize it was so naturally placed that I didn't realize I was supposed to go there. So some story points though, I want to say it was completely good. They felt a little forced. Like one time you're kind of killing these crystal guardians. You don't know they're crystal guardians, and then you kill them, and then Exodus is able to take the crystal. And it's like, I could have predicted that. But the real thing is near the end, right? So you finally beat Exodeth the first time. Gololf sacrifices himself. You go back to your home world after both worlds are now collided, and you're having a great time. And then fucking Exodeth is back because he's a tree. By the way, we knew this, but like, he's a tree, and a thorn was stuck in Curl's hand, and fucking spawns out of nowhere and starts fucking shit up again. It's like, what? That's how he comes back, like a thorn in Curl's hand. That's kind of lame. Another thing I kind of mentioned in my previous video is the summons, which is my favorite part of Final Fantasy IV. And I have to say, besides the gameplay system, summons are, again, they're so cool. They're so cool. Finding them naturally throughout the world in the game was sick, and it was kind of cool on my part. One of the things is that it turns out finding Odin, the fire one, not Odin, the fire one, Bahamut, no, the fire one, is mandatory for the story. You need to use it to get through someplace. I didn't know that, and I just like exploring, and I found it naturally. Like, this is the sickest shit. And then like you go through one door, and then it's Ifrit, and then Ifrit's like says like, move out of the way. And I'm like, oh, they have an extra dialogue option if you have Ifrit, and then I found out later you have to get Ifrit. But it's so cool. And then Ramuh, I think Odin's my favorite. I used Odin so much more here than Final Fantasy IV. Oh, Sambakdo! So sick. And then Ramuh is my second favorite. Every time I would use it, I'd be like, Ramuh from the skies! It was sick. It was sick. Alright, back to the story. I guess my notes are kind of all over the place. The story doesn't really exist. Like I said, it's kind of like an iffy story. Like the gameplay was really getting me going and getting me excited to play this game. And it's kind of like going along, and then it fucking hits. And then immediately, it's just like there's a switch. It turns. It's like I'm invested in the story now, and it's kind of near the at the end of to start the third act is kind of where it begins. Specifically when Golov switches to Carol, because my new favorite moment in any of these Final Fantasy games so far is the scene where Golov, throughout his pain and his death, he keeps moving to save the entire party and sacrifice himself. Because how the Pixar Remaster does it is it has him walking and walking. It's like, why isn't it killing him? Why isn't he dead? And he's like negative HP, and he keeps on walking. And then he like grabs Exodus or something. It's maybe the coolest cutscene I think so far. And the saddest and the best death, especially because Final Fantasy IV has only fake deaths besides Tella and Edward. But it's so cool. And then, complaint that I have in Final Fantasy IV is addressed. Every single thing about Golov is transferred to Creel, whatever her name is. Thank you. I don't have to level her up, or maybe she's like a set level. No, every single thing gets transferred over. 992, they knew that. Thank you. The only thing though is that when Leia is out of the party for a certain amount of time because she's captured, she doesn't level up with the party, which is a little annoying. I kind of get why, but it's like, oh, now she's under level compared to everyone else. And it's like, okay, cool. That was a little annoying. Next thing on the note. Interesting how every Final Fantasy main character so far has an important dad. In Final Fantasy 3, they made this in the 3D remake, have the main character have an important dad. Final Fantasy 4 is like a Lunarian. Final Fantasy 5, that his dad was one of the warriors that sealed Exodus the first time. And his main character chosen one shit, but it's like cool. I don't know. Maybe hopefully Final Fantasy 6 does something different. Maybe Final Fantasy Adventure does that, just or Mystic Quest does that have a story? I don't know. Yeah. So here's where I get into the problems with the game. So there's some things that were never explained. And the main thing being, it could have been explained, I could have missed it, but the Freelancer class, which in Final Fantasy 3 was literally just a joke class until you reached level 90, and then it had insane stat growth. And it's like only use it for grinders and people who knew. But in this game, it's actually the best class, like from any level, because it takes all of the skills. You're able to use any of the skills and more skills from all of the classes that you got, and it has like pretty good stat growth with it. All of the abilities with all of the other classes that you've leveled up. And so optimally, like what you should do to beat the boss is just switch everything to Freelancer if you got your abilities and just fucking cook the boss that way. I didn't know that. The final boss took me hours to beat. I had maybe 20 tries on the final boss using every single different method. And finally, I just had to look things up, like how do other people do this? Because I wasn't using a guide for any of this game. And none of this game. I knew nothing about anything. And I was like, I'm stuck on this boss. I need to look something up. And I saw every single person using Freelancer. I was like, what? Is that a challenge? No, every single person used Freelancer because it's the best. And I had no clue. And what I ended up doing is I ended up having to level up specific classes to get their abilities because there's some broken abilities. And I had no clue. So I think I am praising that, like, you don't know what their abilities are, but I think maybe saying the name of an ability you can get if you level up to level 10 or whatever, the class, and so you can be like, oh wait, that could be good, like dual cast. Wait, actually, I think I want to try and see what dual cast is, just to make me, because with some classes, I would think the red mage would be super bad, but it's actually, its ability, its max level ability is one of the best in the entire game, and I would have no clue. And so I was stuck in the final boss. I had to look it up, and then I came up with my own strategy. But it was very annoying that, like, the very last moment was kind of sour because I had to look up how to beat the final boss and I did it from something that it didn't tell me. I don't know. Why would I ever use the freelancer class? Like, it's the first class, and just to have a class in the beginning, why is it actually like the best one, more really useful? Is stupid. Another thing, this is not a problem, but I thought Berserker was like one of my favorite classes. I thought it was very, very good. I was using for it through most of the game, and I found out after like watching like a tier list or something of the jobs, it's the worst job. Cool. I liked it though. So, what this game is making me want to do, I'm never gonna play Final Fantasy in my life. Final Fantasy 4, maybe replay if I get the story. I already want to replay Final Fantasy 5. And using jobs I didn't use, because like some of the later jobs you get, I just didn't use at all, or maybe I only used a job just to level it up to get this ability near the final boss. I was like, is this it? So there's a lot of jobs I really, really want to play. I want to play the game and try use those jobs specifically. I want to do a playthrough of using only jobs that I didn't use in the first playthrough, and I'm excited to do that eventually. I have other games to get to first, but that's definitely one. And also, speaking of how 5 was 3-2, it's kind of funny because 3 was Final Fantasy 1-2, 4 was Final Fantasy 2-2 with the story first approach, 5 is Final Fantasy 3-2 or Final Fantasy 1-3, and I think 6 is 4-2 because it's very story driven and not class customization like Final Fantasy 5. And then 7 is like its own thing, but I have no idea. We'll get to that when we get to that. So, all in all, much shorter than the other video, Final Fantasy 4. Sorry, it was very long. It was like 45 minutes. But overall, Final Fantasy 5 for me gets a 9 out of 10. This game is fantastic. It is already creeped up into not only like one of my favorite RPGs of all time, but one of my favorite games of all time. Ever since I've beaten this game, I have thought of it like once a week, like one story point, one class, one of the summons, getting one of the summons, one intrinsic moment like I had of like natural discovery. This game, I mean, I beat it in like less than 20 days, 30-hour game. I don't know if I played a story game that much before, and I was working 2 jobs at the time I was playing this game, by the way. That's how little time I had and how much I was playing this. This game is a straight masterpiece, and I would say if anyone wanted a starting place for Final Fantasy, so far this is it. So far, the Pixel Remaster of Final Fantasy V it's phenomenal. 9 out of 10, fantastic game. And that still holds up, especially the Pixel Remaster with the soundtrack. I still listen to the soundtrack, especially Harvest. That song is amazing. Alright, so the next game that will be up, as said in Final Fantasy 4, BEFFIOBSIWWM, is Final Fantasy Adventure, the Game Boy game. And at this current time of recording, I've beaten it. I can't wait to say my thoughts on it. Here's the ranking of the game so far. And I hope you have a fantastic day.